And we are live. Good morning.
Hey, morning.
Gentlemen, on this beautiful, rainy Wednesday morning. Is it rainy where you are?
It's actually sunny here.
Here too. You're in the
I've had close. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Maybe it's because I got the blinds closed. Maybe it's quite simple.
What about you, Randy? What's it like where you are?
Oh, it's lovely here today after a couple of rainy days. So, Bertie, you're clearly in the wrong place.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Nottingham. Amit, Randy, where are you guys this morning?
I'm in Denby, not too far from you.
And
Just
I'm
in
down in London.
Denby,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I think I remember going to Denby as a school trip. I don't know if I've ever been since. That was a very, very long time ago.
Where did you go? To the pottery?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're just around the corner from there.
Right. Fantastic. So good morning anyway. Thanks for joining today. So yeah, anyone that's joining us live, great to have you here. So we are just going to wait a couple of minutes just for those LinkedIn notifications to go out. Yes, what we're talking about today is what COVID has surfaced for leadership. So Amit and Randy and I got together. We met earlier on this year, didn't we? No, we met last year, Amit. When was it?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, about a year ago now. Yeah,
about a year ago. It's coming to our anniversary.
Yeah, 1 year. It's commitment.
And then Randy, you and I met through Amit, didn't we?
That's true. Yeah, earlier this year.
Yeah, I do. I remember it was definitely sunny because I was sat in a hammock and Amit said that we should speak. So yeah, I remember that very clearly. Excellent. Well, we'll just wait for some people to join us. I'm just going to load the comments up here. So yeah, anyone that's joining us today, and thank you if you're watching this on the replay. So basically what we're going to talk about today is what has COVID surfaced for leadership. Because Amit and I were we'd met at the back end of last year, got talking. Amit, in fact, you were doing a talk, weren't you, at an event? So I don't know if you just want to talk about that briefly, what you were speaking about then.
Yeah, I was talking about purpose and about how organizations can actually use purpose as a tool to align the organization and create strategy, engage everybody. So I was giving a talk on purpose, and that's one of my passions. And we met there. You didn't actually get to see it, did you? I think you had to go off.
No, I was just leaving. No, I was just leaving the event. Sorry, I'm getting passed to me at the same time. At the time, but yeah, someone had been saying. I was chatting to somebody else about purpose and leadership and that kind of thing, and they were like, "You've got to go and speak to this guy. I've just been speaking to him. It's amazing." I had looked around this conference about 2 or 3 times to try and find you, and then you were just going on stage. We had a brief chat, which was I think we got on really well. We did meet in the pub. Did have a face-to-face meeting afterwards.
We did, yeah. I think we've only had that one face-to-face, haven't we? Then since then, it's all been virtual, yeah.
And then the rest of the time has just been on Zoom, and now streaming live.
Yeah, and Randy and I we met last year as well, didn't we, Randy? And,
we did, yeah.
We were talking at a conference in London about the work that I do in organisations and the work that Randy does as a consultant, particularly around product, and really excited about what could be emerging in the space between our work. And so we started having a bit of a dialogue and discussing it and doing some writing around it. And I think what happened then, COVID sort of kicked in, and we started to talk about what's actually happening for leaders, which is part of what we're talking about today. And I guess this is just the first of 3 sessions. Is that right, Bertie?
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to do a follow-up next week, and of course then the week after, same time, same place. So we'll put that event onto LinkedIn later on. So that's I think there's quite a lot to talk about because what we're going to talk about today is the data that we've got, the data that we've put together. And I think next week it's going to be more about the implications of what that data means for leaders and organizations. And then in the third session, we'll start exploring those methodologies for change for the leaders and organizations as well. So
yeah, maybe we should have a quick round about each of us, what we do and stuff.
Okay, so who wants to begin?
If people are interested in that.
Go ahead, Amit.
Hey?
Go ahead, Amit.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Amit and co-founder and catalyst at an organisation called Fieldwork, and we are a sort of boutique consultancy that help organisations transition towards being more purposeful and more purpose-driven. So that's me. Over to whoever wants to share next.
Sure. I'm Randy Silver. I'm a product management consultant. I've got a long history in the field. I wrote a book earlier this year. I run a podcast on it. And my consultancy is called Out of Owls. Bertie?
Thank you. My name's Bertie, obviously. And I run a company now called Bertie Cord. So I'm a business coach consultant that work with startup businesses, based on my entrepreneurial experience. So I founded fillmybelly.com, took that right through to exit to Just Eat. And since then I've invested in, worked with incubators and all that sort of stuff. So now I share my knowledge and experience with people wanting to go through that same journey and go and just start something new. So lots of experience across building businesses and product, although I didn't really realize that I was a product guy until recently. So yeah, me and Randy have had some great chats about that.
But the reason that the three of us are all chatting is we got together earlier this year and realized there was a huge amount of overlap between what we were doing and the challenges we saw with all of our contacts, especially as the pandemic started to hit and lockdown came. And it was the theme of my book was, what do we do now? It was based on conversations with product people around your roadmaps and all your planning was going to hell. So what do you do? And the comments the conversation I had with yourselves, with you, Bertie and Amit, was fantastic. And what we heard from our mutual contacts was really interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's I think we gleaned so much information. That's what we want to talk about today, right? That's what the actual data that we've put together.
Yeah, I mean, we talked to all of our own individual clients and contacts, but we also collectively put on some circles for senior leaders and founders. And it was just quite early on. I think it was early May time?
Mm-hmm.
So it was only a couple
of. It wasn't long into lockdown, was it?
Yeah, so it was still quite hot then, wasn't it? And for people in terms of the pressure and the stress that was on, and I think we framed those conversations around giving the leaders an opportunity to actually connect with other peers that they may not know, but connect with peers at the same sort of level and be able to hear the experiences of others as well as share their own, particularly around relating to the times that we're in right now and the crisis and what people are going through, but also in terms of what was emerging. What was emerging for in terms of challenges, in terms of experiences.
Yep. So, can you remember sort of like obviously we can remember, that's what we're talking about, but like the common themes that we were sort of finding in those circles. Because like imposter syndrome, that was quite a big one, wasn't it? So should we just talk around that a little bit?
Yeah, for anyone who doesn't know what it is imposter syndrome is something certainly I've experienced. I know most of my peers have experienced it. It's the feeling like you're faking it. You don't really belong in the role that you're in. And one of the key things to remember when that happens is think about somebody else who you would imagine would be in that role and would be doing a good job, and ask, would they be doing anything different than what you're doing? Why aren't you qualified to be in that role? And it's one of those things, we all suffer from it and we all know it, but it's ultimately something that's a sign of maturity. It's a sign that you know how much you don't know. And it can be a real positive as long as you treat it well. What else?
Absolutely.
And we also
just to build on that, actually, Randy, I think one of the things that I could really hear from the people we spoke to was because of the amount of challenge that was unprecedented, it's not like any one of us has been through anything like this before. That just heightened that feeling of imposter syndrome. So how am I prepared to actually deal with this as a leader? How have I got the capability to actually know what's coming next, and to know how to manage it and how to support my people and my business. I think that was really, really quite strong. And I wonder, I guess, how easy that was for people, A, to acknowledge internally for themselves, oh, this is how I'm feeling, and B, there's a real challenge about actually sharing that, and that takes courage actually to say, this is what's going on for me. So that was what I really heard, which links on, I guess, to the next point, which was
absolutely. Imposter syndrome is definitely something that, I think it's good that you explained the terminology, Randy, because I think it's probably something that most people have felt a lot of the time, but it's never until you actually realize that there's a label to it and other people experience that same feeling. It's certainly something that I've felt throughout my career, and I think that's the point I was making earlier.
Still have it. It still happens.
Yeah, I've ran and built a business, but yet still, it's like, because I didn't go to university and I'm not formally qualified in product and that side of things. Sometimes you think, well, actually, why does my opinion matter? So yeah, I think everybody does experience it. So I think, it leads nicely onto the next point, which was a lot of people felt alone. Leaders felt alone, and this wasn't just CEOs. This was product leaders, marketing leaders, because we had a whole range of people within those circles. And I think going through the experience of COVID was quite isolating. And people didn't really have, or felt that they didn't have people to share those experiences with. And that was something that I found quite surprising, I suppose, because I'd spoke to lots of smaller businesses at the beginning and held lots of little online networking events, etc. So it felt like I had spoke to a lot of people. So when we'd gone into these big organizations and then they hadn't, that was quite a big takeaway for me. What were your thoughts on there?
Well, there's always the issue that as you get more senior in an organization, the amount of people who you have in your community there who are at your level, who are experiencing the same sort of thing, could vastly shrinks. And when we were all going out and able to be social with people, it was different. You'd go to meetups sometimes. You'd meet other people from other organizations. You go to conferences and talks, and you'd meet people in similar roles, and you're able to share your concerns and your experiences. And during the last 6-8 months, it's been a very different experience. Our calendars are filled up with only the meetings that are scheduled. We only talk to the people we already know. It's been harder to meet people and to find these spaces. And
absolutely,
we were able to provide one. It made a real difference for people. And I know, as I've talked to friends and sought to either find spaces or create my own for this type of interaction, it's made a massive difference.
Absolutely. And it's also those little things that you don't know you've lost until you've lost them, that we could take for granted, that like the coffee at the printer. You're getting your cup of coffee, you meet someone at the printer, you say, oh god, you know what, it's really full on today. Or just having those little chats, regardless of who it's with, they're not there anymore. So now we've all, many of us, particularly through that time, maybe a bit less now that we're back at work supposedly, but we're with our families at home. Can we talk to our partners? Do they want to hear it? Do they get it? The kids, etc., family members. How often? And we're just in those meetings, like you say, Randy. We're in the meetings with our teams, and so it can be quite isolating. And I think there are potentially ways to get around that, like creating the sort of circles that we did.
Yeah, I think those they were a long, I can't even remember how long we did them for. It was about 3 or 4 hours, I think, in total. So I think there was a lot of learnings from us personally in there. But I think a lot of the people that joined us in those circles, did we get through about 20 people, I think, across the 2 sessions. Mm-hmm. That was the first interaction they'd had with other business leaders outside of their organization. So I think that stuff was really, really valuable for them. And the amount of stuff that we took from that was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot more data we captured, which I guess, I mean, we could maybe now move on to, because we captured data ourselves, but we also did some research into a couple of other organisations and the data that they captured, namely the Barrett Value Centre and McKinsey and Company. So we've actually tried to pull all this data together to share with you, which will give you a much bigger picture, qualitative data as well as quantitative. So maybe a good time to sort of move on to the Barrett Value Centre data. I don't know if you've got the table that we can pull up, which also includes the data that we captured. So there's some more themes in there. Now we can see Bertie. And
yeah, that's it.
There we go. That's it. Great.
The I was going for.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, there we go. So we've got the data that we've captured on the far right, and in the middle we've got the data from the Barrett Value Centre. And just to give you a bit of context into Barrett, the Barrett Value Centre uses personal values as a reflection of organisational health. So they capture the data that we see here through short surveys and assessments, which they generally do through consultants at a regular basis. But during COVID, they actually did a specific set of research where they captured data from 2,500 participants in organisations around the world. And they looked at the data pre-COVID. How was culture, organisational culture before? How was it during? What was emerging? And what's the potential desired future? And I guess what they really know is that the values our personal values reflect what really matters to us. And they shape the way that we behave. And when our personal values are really aligned to the values in an organisation, then that creates a much bigger sense of connection and commitment, and it also has an impact on not just organisational health, but actually organisational performance as a whole. So the data that they captured, the themes that we've got here in the centre, there's some really interesting themes that also cross over into the research that we did and the research from McKinsey, don't they, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really impressed, Amit, by the way you pulled this together. And Bertie, I don't know if you're ready to move forward onto the Venn diagram that Amit did.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that shows how these things all relate to each other, which was the really interesting bit. There's a lot more alignment and there's a lot more overlap than people sometimes think between management consulting approach to this and a more holistic approach. And the reality is that's what it takes to make a good company these days.
Yeah, and maybe it's I mean, there's probably more that could go into this diagram, but at a top level, there's lots of really interesting themes and crossovers, and maybe it's actually, we've had this opportunity and this type of organisation has already been emerging globally. I think we'll talk about this a lot more in our session next week. But there's some really interesting themes that have shown up en masse. It's almost like what happened during the crisis was it catalyzed something that was already happening in social systems and in organizations. And it just, shoved it along. It gave it a real big push. And suddenly we've seen organizations and leaders reporting back and saying, look, these are the kind of things that happened. And we want to keep hold of this. How do we keep hold of this? Or do we just go back to the old way?
Yeah, I think it's probably taken things that were almost like nice to haves, like people, like maybe they had the culture meetings within the company and they wanted to try and bring these things in, but it was never really a priority. There's always more, like there's fires burning that need to put out. Whereas I think what COVID did and what this situation did, it almost just forced everybody just to rethink what they did. And suddenly things then like, remote working, which, some companies embraced, others were really against, people had to do, right. And I think that's then filtered through people. And then they were a lot more tolerant about people working from home and having kids around and all that sort of stuff. And I think it's just brought it to the forefront. I think, overall, I think we've always got to empathize. And this was always the difficulty at the beginning, especially for those first couple of months. Like we didn't really know anything about it. Like obviously there were people dying and still are dying. And there's all the human impacts of COVID. but then it was bringing those positive aspects of what this situation. I think whenever there's a crisis, it always brings out the best and the worst of people, doesn't it? And I think we've seen that even up until today. So yeah, I think it's really made organizations think about what does matter. And the amount of emails and things that I see now, like job requests, like not just this is a remote position temporarily, like we are moving remote, companies are moving remote. It's like remote first. There was another company this morning, I can't remember who it was though. It's quite a big company. It was just saying, yeah, we are remote. That's it. Possibly it was Dropbox, but I don't know.
And Microsoft announced in the past couple of days that they're allowing people to work remotely forever. And so you're seeing a lot has changed on the micro level, as you were talking about having interruptions during meetings and giving people more flexible working time and things like that. There's also been some massive macro changes in culture, and those have been around things like in product, we talk a lot about trying to focus on outcomes instead of outputs. So what are we trying to achieve rather than just how many widgets do we push through in a given day, week, hour? And that's something that it's been an intention to move towards that. But you can't measure people purely on widgets and still get the business goals done, especially when you don't have line of sight of them. So that management by observation, by having people sitting at their desk and doing productivity theater, that had to go away. So which meant that you had to know what your goals actually were, give people some autonomy in being able to figure out how to work on them and move towards those goals, collaborate together and swarm on them. And it's just a totally different way of working. And I've been really impressed in seeing how well it has worked for a lot of companies. And every time a company tries to do things like doing things with a webcam to check, are you at your desk? Are you looking at the monitor? How many keystrokes?
Totally.
There's been huge pushback against it every single time.
Yeah. I'm really surprised at how many leaders have come out and said, it's incredible. Our people went to work from home. I was really stressed out, really worried about how they were going to do it, how we were going to perform, and they performed better than they had before. And that says a lot. I think it says a lot about our maybe the older paradigm that we're maybe coming out of working, and our belief systems really about each other, about our people. And I think, Bertie, if you could you just pull that Venn diagram up again, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, what this Venn diagram, now actually I look at it and I see it's really important that there are these three areas that Randy, as you said, it's holistic. They all operate together. It's very easy to look at organizational structure separately and have a team working on that and a team working on culture and have a culture meeting, your leaders and not seeing the weave between how leadership capability in driving this type of system and appreciating and engaging people in, how do we build the culture together? What kind of structure is right for our organization? And attending to all of these different aspects that we see in this Venn diagram is a group exercise. It isn't something that, and it is a whole piece. It's a whole system. It's an ecosystem. And maybe COVID has given us an opportunity to check in on that and see that and realize actually there is a much more systemic view available to us that could be really helpful, particularly as we are in times of great uncertainty, right? As everyone's saying, it's uncertainty is the next normal and all this kind of stuff. Everyone's probably bored of hearing that. But it does feel like that. It does feel like we are moving into very uncertain, challenging times, and they're increasing more and more. So we have to become more attuned into these sort of capabilities within this Venn diagram.
Yeah, I completely agree. So we're just coming up to our time now. So what would you like to conclude on? Obviously, we are continuing next week with this conversation. Is there anything else you just want to finish off on?
Yeah, so I think this is very little of this is new. I think the massive difference is the fact that it's happening to everybody at once. It's in the biology terms, this thing called punctuated equilibrium, where everything is kind of consistent, and then an outside event happens, it changes the underlying structure, and everyone has to adapt, and everyone has to respond to it. And that's what we're seeing now. But none of this is really new. We've always been in uncertain times. There's always been a new challenger that came in, a regulation that changed a killer new feature that a rival has put out that made you have to adapt to it. It's just that it didn't happen all at once.
Yeah.
To see everyone dealing with it at the same time and no longer fooling themselves that dealing with uncertainty and being adaptable is now seen as a really key value.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. Like, things were still happening, weren't like? It's obviously we had the whole, working from home, a remote working thing that was just thrown in for everyone. But yeah, businesses still had their business as usual, which was either good or bad, and then all of the other factors that were thrown in by COVID. Some businesses, physically couldn't trade. Some had to pivot dramatically. Others thrived, all depending on what the business was. So I think but yeah, I think what united everyone there was this common, well, actually, we've all got to work from home. We've got to find a way of making it work. Like, everybody, like, without sort of going through like a war or anything, I think no one in our generation has had anything that's really brought everyone, united everyone, good and bad,
absolutely
in
this time. Yeah, we're all facing the same challenge. I really like the way you put it, Randy. That we've had all of these things happening, but bang, all at the same time. And I think from an organisational context, well, like I mentioned earlier, that type. If we look back, not that you don't need to pull it up again, but that Venn diagram represents a kind of new era of organisations that has been emerging for a number of years. But COVID, may have catalysed a significant leap in that process. So, and I think as well that new era, when we look at that type of organisation, it brings us a lot more benefits as a species, actually. So to jump out into a really big picture here, but we are not just facing COVID, we are facing an ecological emergency, we're facing resource challenges, political challenges. Every type of challenge we could be facing is ramping up right now, and we need organisations that are much more tuned into the bigger picture and able to support and work with that, as well as perform well, which means be sustainable at a monetary level.
And one thing we should have mentioned earlier, and a good lesson for us for next time, Amit, you wrote a really wonderful article on all this, and that's where the Venn diagram and that chart come from. So if you're interested in going back and seeing more about this or just digesting it a little bit better, just go to his profile on LinkedIn, and you can find the article there.
Yeah, you can drop that in the comments if you want, Amit. Just drop just afterwards. Yeah, you can drop that in.
Okay. I'll drop the link into it. But yeah, that article, it's a 10-minute read. It kind of goes a lot deeper than what we've done today, but it gives you a lot more context to it. So I'll drop the link into the comments. How do I do that in comments? I can't seem to do that. I'll go to comments and there's nothing there.
I think you can do it afterwards. You have to do it now.
Yeah, I'll do it later on. Yeah, I think the other thing is that there are implications for creating that type of organisation that we see in the Venn diagram, and those implications are most important for us as leaders. In fact, leaders, founders, and investors. And I think that's what we really want to sort of dive into next time, and the next couple of sessions is really, what are the implications of this? How do we create this type of more post-conventional, futuristic organisation that is emerging, has been there, is tried and tested.
And let's discuss that next week. So sorry to cut you off. We do have to call time now.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's been great to see you both again. Thank you very much. And yes, we'll be here next Wednesday. I don't know what date that is, but you can figure it out at 10:30 on LinkedIn Live. So thank you very much, Randy. Thank you, Amit. And we will see you again next week.
Cheers, Bertie. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertie. Bye.
Bye.